Welcome to the Strong, Single and Human podcast, a real look at single parenting, how to navigate the ups and downs of life with kids on your own while keeping sane. We cover all manner of subjects from domestic violence, dealing with childhood trauma, through to fussy eaters and how to help your kids become resilient. I'm your host, Claire Martin. Welcome. Janet Price is the founder of JP Coaching and Consulting, and her mission is to help parents and children navigate divorce and beyond. She offers innovative tools, strategies and solutions to minimize the impact of divorce trauma and help families shift from surviving to thriving. Janet has personally experienced many life-altering events, including being a child of a high-conflict divorce and then finding herself in a high-conflict co-parenting dynamic, defending false allegations that no parent should have to defend, and having her children never come home to live with her at the ages of 11 and 13. And then to eventually build strong, loving bonds with her children as adults. Through her own healing journey, she has discovered her life's purpose, which is to work with parents in their co-parenting relationships and end the generational cycle of pain and trauma caused by unconscious parenting. Janet believes that it's possible to enjoy life despite experiencing pain and complication, and she wants to help others do the same. This is the Strong, Single and Human podcast. Hi, welcome, Janet Price. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, well, thank you very much. How are you today?
I'm fine. I'm okay on this slightly chilly but blue-skied morning. So, hey, look, tell us a bit about your story and how you founded JP Coaching.
Certainly. So, JP Coaching and Consulting is my second career, pretty much. I went to college and I left my family home and wanted to live and die in downtown LA and own a skyscraper, big plans. And went through and graduated college, met my first husband. We went to grad school. He went to law school. I went to business school. We then got these big swanky jobs, both of us, working in downtown LA. And I was working as a consultant. So I was on a plane a lot, helping, and it was in the healthcare industry. And then as life goes, we get married. We're living this great life. And then I wasn't really paying attention very much. So finally I figured out I was pregnant.
Oh,
I was on the plane, So I really, it kind of hit me when I just started like that. So the moment my first son was born, I really, up until that moment, had no idea whether I was going to go back to my career. I loved my career. I just didn't have a sense. My sister was going to be the mother. She babysitted. My mom had to had to get a babysitter I'm the older one, for us, because she thought I was going to kill my younger sister. So I didn't think I had nurturing in me.
Yeah.
And the day he was born, I just could not imagine doing anything else but being at home. So
it's amazing when they pop out, isn't it? And you just go, oh my God, I made this. And this is like the best thing ever.
Oh, I love my job. I just couldn't figure out how to split me in half at that point. Right.
Yeah.
So I was fortunate that I had that opportunity, right? So I became a stay-at-home mom, and our second son came along 23 months later, and I learned a lot about parenting. I really dived into it because I didn't feel that I had a great childhood, and I was not going to do and repeat what was given to me.
Yeah.
And then several years later, the communication dynamic problems that we had in our marriage that were masked by the fact that we were two working individuals. And so if there was a problem, it wasn't a big enough problem, became clear. And so we were divorcing, and we divorced very quickly, mediated, and there was no money. It was sell the house, take your money, no support, no anything, 50-50. And again, determined not to childhood trauma that I had been in from my parents' divorce when I was in 6th grade, and really had a clear idea in my mind of what I wasn't going to do as a co-parent, and try as I might to not create that same dynamic. That dynamic kept playing out in my co-parenting situation more and more and more. And then several years after my second son was born, the communication dynamic was, it became clear that the problems that we had in our marriage were not getting worked out. And we ended up divorcing. And we did it very rapidly, mediated and just sold the main asset, our home, and then split the asset. And then there was no money besides that, no alimony, no child support. We just went our separate ways.
But it was amicable separation and like 50-50.
Well, from that standpoint, right, we mediated in 3 days. And I thought, well, geez, if we want the best for our children, I was comfortable in knowing how to make money and just basically figured we could figure it out because we love our children and we would be able to figure it out. And then because, again, my childhood story where my parents divorced when I was in 6th grade, I had a very clear image of what I would not do in a co-parenting relationship, or how I would be towards my children by putting them in the middle and all that sort of thing. And try as I might to continue to do that, it seemed that the more amicable and the more friendly I was in the relationship, in the co-parenting relationship, the worse things got.
Wow.
And the biggest baffling was that prior to ending, to becoming a stay-at-home mom, the place in my career was I was leading these very large projects where I was the main person, lots of team underneath me, and we were actually working in conflict resolution. And it was my job to resolve conflict. And so that was like the most baffling part. Why was I lots of accolades in my workplace. Why was I able to do this over here and seemingly failing over here, no matter how much effort I was putting in it? And so how did JP coaching and consulting form? That whole co-parenting dynamic escalated and escalated over the next 10 years of co-parenting. And we went back and forth to court a total of 5 times. So it was enough to be a single mom, having your children 50% of the time, putting food on the table, and battling in court a total of 5 times, and battling all the time. So what ended up happening is there were lots of lessons in that battling that I had. And the last one was quite traumatic, where we were in court because I was falsely accused of sexually abusing both my sons.
Wow.
And then the court is the one that put a no contact order on me that lasted during this battle for more than 3.5 years. So I had no contact with my sons from the time they were 11 and 13 due to the courts. And the way this family system goes until, 3.5 years later, when we settled, because no facts of the court case had ever been heard. So that settling was the beginning of me taking a step back and saying, no more. I am not working to put food on the table for something that I don't love. I am not working I've spent too much time. So I really started doing the healing, the court case, all the 10 years of everything, and asking why. What's my purpose? What am I supposed to be here for? And pulling everything together. And that's where JP coaching and consulting came in its initial forms, because what I saw was that the talents that I loved was the coaching part.
Yeah.
And so life transitions, because during that time period, it was amazing. I mean, my last court case cost me $1 million myself, and I was able to come out of that and thrive. Right. So I had a lot of life transition skills.
Oh my God, Jesus.
And so I started there. And as I was doing coaching and life transition coaching, then we were talking about this earlier before we came on the podcast. 6 months after I settled, the Woolsey fire came through my neighborhood, neck of the woods. And my second husband and I stayed and fought the fire, defended our home.
Yeah.
And it was in that moment of literally 48 hours of fighting the fire flames going through our home that it became very clear. It was a cleansing for me that just said, this is where I need to be. I've figured it out. And that's kind of what happened. And then I started getting pulled into the space now. So while I do help anyone in a life transition, my focus really is on parents who are experiencing or thinking about going through, or it happens to them, divorce and anywhere after. So I've evolved from the life transition to very focused in that area.
I mean, it just blows my mind that you can have a relationship, produce 2 children with a partner, split up, and it happens so many times that they then come back to court or go to court, that you negotiate and agree 50-50, everything's fine. And then 2 or 3 years down the line, something happens and they then start to say, oh, this person abused my child. So emotionally abused them, physically abused them, sexually abused them, whatever, where there's no truth to the matter, but it just is like sticking a knife in and twisting it. Do you know what I mean? And I've come across several people who have been through this situation, right? And it's so traumatic.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you get through something like that? I mean, like you said, it cost you a fortune, but
and that was the 5th time. Whatever, that was just that one last one. I had to refinance my house, several times before the last time. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So, here's the funny thing. When you're so in it many times, and the legal professionals, when you're using, and the support system that you think are the right people to be going through, who've been doing this, sometimes don't know how to communicate or say or look at something to understand what's going on. So in that 10-year time period that I was in this, I was asking people for help, and somehow, what's going on. And somehow with the lens that they had, they only could see it from a lens of enmeshed conflict on both sides, right? And I kept saying, is there anything I can do to do different to stop this? Is there anything? And no one was ever shining the light for me to show me that in reality, there is a particular types of traits that happen with people in which you need a whole new different playbook. And so in my mind, I was over 10 years, I thought I was dealing with a co-parent for some reason that had decided that they were hurt and injured and sad. I really wasn't sure why, because they are the ones that moved on. But what was coming towards me was that, right? Anger and rage and sadness. And so
and wanting to hurt you by using the children as such.
And so I saw that clearly. Yeah. And so I thought the way to combat that was to just stay constant, loving, consistent, holding the grounds, and just logical, right?
Yeah.
And what I didn't see, and this is when I finally woke up to kind of what was going on in the dynamics, is that playbook doesn't work when you have somebody that is in this mental state, whether it's because they're stuck in sadness, they're stuck in anger, they're stuck because they feel they've been injured. There's no particular reason why somebody stays there. But once they do, there's almost nothing you can do to change that. That's up to them to change.
And so? Sorry, carry on.
Go ahead.
No, well, I was just thinking, so that is an ex-partner in attack mode, really, is what I wanted to clarify, right? Because it's somebody who is wanting to attack you as the co-parent, right? It's not that, and yeah, it's just, was it because of the way that you were bringing up the kids, the boys, that was different from his view, or like that he went into attack mode? Or was it just that it was working, he was working through his, what's the word I'm looking for? His grief of the relationship? Like, what were some of the things that you went to court about? So the court detail. Is
the court was really the playing out of why now this is exactly where I work, is shining the light for the parents. Yeah. It's the nitty gritty that doesn't need to be there. And so it was the granular, and this is what so I had 5 different attorneys represent me during these time periods, not because I fired or they fired me, but because the skills that were needed were different for each time. So, and every single time, no attorney who you would expect to kind of say, hey, I think this is going on because you're working with them all the time, ever said anything to me. I had to finally wake up and see it for myself.
Wow.
And seeing it for myself was that the playbook of me just staying logical, because what presented all along for me from the very beginning was anger and sadness, and you ruined me. And I never wanted our family to disappear. I wanted our family. I never wanted a divorce.
Yeah.
Those were the initial words. Now, those words never changed over the 10-year period. Wow. The victim model was always there. I'm the victim, even though the situation was, which is why I was so baffled. The situation was, he had moved on, he remarried, he ended up having a child with his new wife. Like, so why is this still there? Right. So why are we still here? And that's why my mindset was, well, at some point he'll find happiness in his new marriage and his new wife and everything, and then it'll all go away. No, that's what I'm saying. So the nitty gritty of the cases we're all picking on, but it was the overarching feelings that he had never gotten over. And this is a particular type of personality. So when you have somebody who, when you have different traits of that, you tend to see that you are always putting yourself in the victim role, that everything happens to you, that you don't take accountability for your part in the relationship, where you can only see how other people's actions, that tends to be what's going on. And I'm not a therapist, so I don't use words of that talk about particular personality disorders. However, there are lots of traits. Now, if you can take a step back, you can start to say that these types of behaviors that are present in a person are the types of behaviors that are a pattern that will take you to these long entrenched post-divorce type battles.
Yeah.
And the parent who is dealing with that needs a completely different playbook to stay out of court. And it's not just stay logical. So my part was the engagement. During all that time, had I stopped engaging, had I just taken a different look, had I stopped trying to cooperate and get on the same page, had I just sort of said, okay, I can only do what's in my lane, everything would have stopped. And that's what I teach now in the co-parenting post-divorce world is what do you do and what can you do on your side so that you don't have to engage so much on the other side. The engagement is what brought us back to court all the time because it was that stuff that was going on.
And I have to agree with you. Like, I mean, my ex-partner drinks and has narcissistic tendencies, right? So it's, from my perspective, it is setting very strict, focused boundaries about my child, so it doesn't put my child at risk, but also it enables my child to still have contact and still be with his dad. And his dad's not a bad person. His dad has dealt with or is dealing with his demons in the only way that he is able to deal with at the moment. And I hope that he goes and gets help and, starts to heal himself, right? But I can't change that. And it's true what you say, right? It's about sitting in your lane and going, right, my child is with me Monday to Friday or whatever. This is what happens, right? And it is setting those clear boundaries and having no confusion.
And knowing when to not get sucked into the emotions of the other person who's trying to engage you and to defend, because every time you defend on something that is not true, it allows for the engagement to go and go and go and the gaslighting and the gaslight. And that's where in our cases, and most parents in this situation where they keep going back and back, it's because of the engagement that ends up getting to the point that one decides to go to court, right? But if you can just keep it down and shut the engagement down, then let the person do what they want to do on their side. Yeah. You do what you want to do on your side.
Yeah.
And your children are way better off for it.
Do you think that a lot of the time there's issues arise because the parents are still acting as though, so i.e., one parent will go, oh, my car won't start in the morning or whatever. And so phones the other parent to say, oh, the car won't start. Can you come over and help me? And so they're still sort of in that relationship. Because for me personally, right, I sit there and I go, not my I sit there and go, not my problem. I'm not in a relationship with you. I'm not here to fix you. And same with me, right? If I had a tire burst on my car, I wouldn't be phoning my ex up and going, hey, can you come and change my tire? Can you do X, Y, and Z? Even though I've got his child and I need to get his child to school or whatever, it's my responsibility to deal with all of those aspects. Do you find that sometimes with the co-parenting, it sort of crosses over into and gets muddied into them still being in that relationship because they've got children together, but it's not a defined they're with you time, they're with me time sort of situation? Do you get what I'm saying?
Oh, I totally do. And actually,
you probably can articulate it better than me.
It's actually what I was able to do. And when I communicate this, not very many people have heard it this way. So when you divorce and you're a parent, or when you separate and you're a parent, if you were married, you are actually negotiating two contracts. You're negotiating your business contract and you're unraveling the business called your marriage. It's a financial decision, right?
Yeah.
And so that was a business. And because you're a parent, you are negotiating your business contract called the co-parenting business. And the title and the mission is your children. And so I start that when I have a high conflict co-parenting program that's through the courts. And so I teach this as one of the days. The first thing. The second is in that your co-parenting relationship is a business partnership. And I talk about what that looks like and how do we move from the intimate partner dynamic dance that you're describing when we're intimate to the business partnership where in businesses, we don't share all our inner emotions. It's limited contact. It's not personal feelings that we share. And it's the hardest thing for parents when I talk about this on that day, for them to say, but wait a minute, they are the mother or the father of my child. Yes. What do you mean that they're not in my intimate circle? And I said, no. You are now co-parenting. You're in a business partnership. That means your feelings get to be shared with someone other than that person. Yeah. And their feelings get to be shared with someone other than that. You're in limited communication. Yeah. You're in need to know type relationship. What do you need to negotiate on a daily basis about drop off? And that is it. Yeah. What do you need to communicate for the success of your children so they can thrive and grow up to be healthy adults? Right? You each bring value to that for them. The fact that you each have different personalities, different strengths and different weaknesses, your child gets to learn how you navigate by watching you. So you're teaching them
I mean, this is the thing, right? If they buy a washing machine and they don't need to know how to plumb it in, they don't call you. They call somebody on their intimate side of the tree, as it were. Like I wouldn't call my ex-partner to fix something in my house. Right. I just wouldn't do that. Even though he is the father of my child, I'd Google it. That would be like, I would Google it. I would call a friend. I would have to pay for somebody to come in and fix it, right? But that's my boundary, right? It's not that I phone my ex-partner and say, come and save me, come and do something because he's no longer in partnership with me, in a relationship with me.
That's right. And the ones that can stay healthy, like the low conflict co-parenting, they stay healthy, understand those boundaries, and also then maybe choose to do birthdays together or to do things like that together. But they understand it on a different level, right? It's sort of, there's still a distance. It's not, there are some parents that are better off friends than they were were when they were married. That's for sure. Right. But there is still that boundary.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And then so that's what you're finding is sometimes when we get into this conflict is because those boundaries are blurred, basically. And it's more than like the relationship that was previous that separated still feels like it's continuing. And there's some intimate attachment there that when one of the parties goes, no, well, I'm not doing that because we're not together. You're married to somebody else or whatever. Go and sort it out with the person you're married to. Is that where there becomes that emotional hurt from the ex-party as such? Do you know what I mean?
That is definitely one way. That's when one party's moved on and the other party is sort of happy to just keep not moving on. That definitely is there. I would say the reverse of that is getting stuck in the intimate communication dynamic that was created when you were living together.
Wow,
which
okay.
was maybe not a very healthy communication dynamic, a power control dynamic,
Yeah.
and so that piece continues when you are co-parenting and living. So if there's a power struggle or something, then well, you must do this or I'll do this, which was in the marriage, still plays out. Like the power dynamic still plays out, or the reacting to the, oh, they said this. I remember that when they said that, that was something that we had problems in our marriage. So I'm going to react the same way. So they don't step out into their own person ever. Right. So it's the toxic communication from the marriage continues in the co-parenting, and they don't ever grow into the healthy communication cycle.
And so is this what you within JP coaching actually sort of succeeds at dealing with for parents or co-parents who are coming out the other side of a divorce, right? Because going to court and getting a divorce has been sort of stated as like PTSD inducing stress, right? it can be like depending on how traumatic that divorce situation is and continues to be, because let's face it, you went through 10 years of this cycle of court trauma, like so is that what you guys do and what your coaching deals with?
Right. So actually how I define, I will support loving parents parent. I work individually. I don't work with the couple together as co-parents.
Okay.
So one or the other, anywhere along the spectrum. So if there is a parent, mother or father, who is thinking about divorce and is concerned that they have a person that they're with that is going to have some of these emotional things that I described, some of these traits that may lead to continuing after a divorce, and it's not going to be easy. I help them navigate. And it can be outside of the court system. It does not mean that if you have, I know everybody says if you have a narcissist, you need the power, bulldog attorney to defend yourself. Not necessarily.
I didn't go through courts, so I haven't, and I haven't gone through courts, and like, hopefully, I won't need to. But yeah, and I've just dealt with it myself, really. But yeah. Exactly.
So help them navigate from the beginning. So I can help them then figure out what they need to do to find and define what they'll need in their parenting plan so that they can draw those boundaries and have peace, right? For the very beginning.
Yeah.
Or anywhere after the divorce and on the long tail end, I support them learn these skills so that they can help remove themselves from that communication and stand tall, with the sole purpose that by them seeing this and becoming healthy for themselves and shutting down the communication that's being kind of circularly negative, they are really helping themselves and helping their children. So their children don't get drawn into the middle, don't get wrapped in to the battle and the pull between their two parents, and their children have the opportunity to actually have a loving relationship with both of their parents so they can navigate and become healthy adults.
Yeah. And that's what we want basically at the end of the day is our kids to grow up and be sane in this crazy world that we live in.
Right. And there is not a parent, no matter what they are, that would ever say, I desire for my kids to be, living off me at 25 and not making anything for themselves, right? Every parent will agree at that time, we want healthy children. The disagreement comes in what they believe based on their value system of what that looks like, right?
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of the stuff, the safety issues or the diet or the medical or what, all those little things, what's how you parent a child, that's where people disagree.
So how do we deal with that sort of situation as such? How do we minimize the divorce, the trauma of divorce, the impacts of it?
Yeah. Yeah. So, they do say that divorce can be one of the most
stressful
traumatic,
things.
stressful for every person in the family unit. So I'd like to bring that up, because I think when everybody thinks about divorce, first and foremost, they just think about the two individuals in the marriage who are divorcing, right?
The kids.
But divorce is a loss to every member of the family. Each of them, and each child, if there's more than one, will have a sense, will go through it differently. And so the best way to prevent children from being traumatized from their experience is, number one, understanding that they too are going to have feelings about the loss of their intact family unit. And so understanding that's the first thing, like really understanding that it's natural that they are going to be experiencing the loss of their intact family. Two, that means they're going to have their own emotions of grieving, just like everybody else.
Yeah.
And so taking a step back and understanding that your child's crying or is upset, or maybe that's coming when the transition back from one house, and checking yourself to make sure you're not immediately mirroring or taking that energy and blaming the parent. That might really be your child's own emotions in their own natural grieving of the difference, and letting them do so without saying, oh my God, the other parent created this problem. And then you're going towards, so allowing the child to experience, right? And not absorbing that child's energy and blaming. So that's the second thing. The third thing is really, really understanding that your child needs to, even if you feel that the other parent maybe has some not so healthy behaviors, your child has a need to have a relationship with both of their parents. And understanding that 100%, like we started out the conversation, defining healthy boundaries that allow for your child to have a relationship with both parents is tremendously important. And for those parents who really, really, really feel like they just can't find anything good or nice to think about the other parent, I would encourage to say, well, you know what? Without that other parent, you wouldn't have this beautiful child in front of you.
Exactly.
So that's the joy right there.
Yeah.
Just find the positive, beautiful moments that you can appreciate. And the more you do that, your child will then feel that they are worthy and they have the right to love both their parents, because the negative and the trauma for the children comes when they feel that they're not allowed to love both parents, because fundamentally children can't internalize or verbalize this not until their adult years. But when a parent makes it be known to their child that they are angry at the other parent, or that other parent is not so great, and there's this negativity about the other parent, somewhere inside the child feels like they, which is half of that other parent, are not worthy.
Exactly. Well, they're to blame in some way. And and I completely agree. I mean, the way that I justify in my head, I don't externalize it to my child, but my child, like my parents, both my mum and my dad, God love them, they are still together, but they are not perfect, right? And as a child, I thought they were, right? And then you grow up and become an adult, and then you go, oh my God. And there's this realization that actually they're just human beings like you and I, and they make mistakes, right? And I sit there and I think, well, my son should love his dad, and and he loves him, right? So I shouldn't color that view. He comes and he will realize that I'm human, his dad's human, and in his own time, right? So why would I want to affect his little ideal view of things, right? Because it's so, when you're a kid, everything's great, right? So, yeah. So it's about,
and then there's this other lesson that you can do if your children do come, because this does happen, where the children come to you and complain about one household or another, or one parent or another, right? It happens, and parents are really have a difficult time of trying to figure out what to do. And here's what I would say about that. What better place to help your child learn life skills about how to navigate all sorts of things, but in the safety of asking questions and asking how they might deal with that situation they don't like very much. So it's almost the best teaching ground. So little examples, whatever they are, if your child comes back to you and says, we're both moms right now, so I'll just use the example of, oh my gosh, Dad, it was so frustrating and there was nothing to do this weekend and I was so bored, right? Or left me all alone and was doing something else, right? Just silly little things, right? And that can lead to the mom send an email going, why are you leaving our son alone? You're so dangerous, right? Right? All this silly stuff. You have a perfect opportunity to say, okay, well, tell me more. You felt alone. What was really going on? Well, what do you like doing? Well, what things do you have to entertain yourself? What ideas? Like helping them find so they can be motivated, right? Yeah. So they can be self-motivated. I mean, doesn't that help when they have to work through a problem at school to solve? Yeah. Aren't they going to become more creative? Doesn't that help when they have a problem at work, when they grow up? I mean, so like you talk about, how do we help teach resilience? Yeah. How do we help give them the skills to problem solve their own problems?
And the thing is, right, like writing and completely going off the handle at the other parent, right, puts them in a very difficult situation, right? Because they're stuck in the middle, right? So it feels like they've come home to you, told tales on their other parent, and therefore, then they will feel as though they can't tell you things that could be really important, right? That so they won't tell you stuff that happens at the other parent's house, right? Right. And then you're not involved in half their life, which is
trauma starts to come in, because now what happens, they're starting to split. That's where that, going back to how do you prevent it? I mean, we talked about, but this is a very good example to say, and then this is what happens, because now they're learning conditions. They're not learning that it's free and safe to have a conversation. There's conditions on either side. And so now they are showing up differently. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
And that's where that starts to come. Now they're learning, I have to do this over here for this person and this over here for this person. I just can't be myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Right? And look, it's difficult, because if you're dealing with addiction and things like that, then you will find that your child will act a certain way with the addicted person because of the trials, tribulations, trauma that is going on over in that side of the fence as such. But it's about supporting them. And I find best with my son, I just say, what do you want me? How can I help you? Right? Because he may go, well, I don't need you to help me with anything, Mum. Or can you just go and ask X, Y, and Z and do it this way? And so you're then working with them to come to a solution, instead of just going, right, well, that's it, I'm going to go and complain, because that might not be what they want. They may just want to be able to tell you, oh, this is what's happening and it's worrying me. But I don't need you to do anything about it. I just want to be able to get it, talk to somebody, right? And that's all you want, is that communication with your child. So,
yes. And when you're talking about addiction or personality disorders or anything like that, this is also the most important time to use it, again, as life lessons to help show them and teach them ways to navigate, because back to why did this whole cycle, what my real wake up was when I realized that I had met my first husband and I gravitated towards him because he had this sense to me. He felt comfortable. He felt comfortable to me because he had all the personality all wrapped up into one of all the conflict from my parents' childhood. And I was trying to resolve the conflict, the unhealed wounds from my childhood of my parents and my parents' divorce. And he had all these different things. So I gravitated towards him.
Yeah.
And so in our marriage, I was replaying the communication dynamics that was going on for my childhood. And when it didn't work, I didn't have any of the tools because I hadn't learned them. Nobody had taught me to solve them. And when we divorced, I was continuing to replay. So when I had to finally wake up and go, oh my gosh, I need new tools for myself. I need to heal myself. I am not the child from 6th grade. I am someone different. I am not unworthy from my parents' standpoint. I am worthy. And when I finally stood up there, I could then look and go, oh, well, I don't need to play that game because that person keeps trying to re-injure my unworthiness.
Yeah.
That's why I found that person. Right.
And it's really funny you say that because I find that a lot of people I talk to regarding single parenting, men or women, right, in their work environment, awesome, right? They're running projects, they're, managing 40 people, they're kicking goals and like having an awesome career, right? Traveling the world, doing everything they need to do. But that's their work environment, right? Where they've learned the skills to manage people and deal with situations within the work environment, because you go out there and you're a graduate or whatever, and you learn the skills of how you need to do things in the work environment. And in relationships, we don't tend to have those skills. Nobody teaches us how, especially if we're from divorced families, or, we're picking up our parents' lack of skills in certain areas. That's how I want to put it, because I can't think of a better way to put it. But they don't have the skills to deal with situations, and therefore we take on board that and don't deal with it the same way.
Yes, it's true. And so while I was conscious in the parenting, when my first son was born and all that, I was conscious that I was not going to be the parent that I had growing up, the parenting that I was very conscious of that. I was not conscious of the other things about my divorce, right? And that was the awakeness of, oh my gosh, I was just magnetized towards this type of behaviors because that's what was familiar in my household from both my mom and my dad. I'm not saying, and the combination of the two. And so I found somebody, who that's how they worked. Yeah. And I was trying to solve my little girl with him by saying, no. And it didn't work. And, I had to heal myself. And so I bring this up because for our children, when we recognize that we maybe have an unhealthy other parent, this is the time to really help them, wake them up and teach them now versus necessarily trying to protect them 100% from those unhealthy behaviors, like awareness and emotional intelligence around those so that they can learn and recognize it, know how to navigate it, and know that when they become adults, they're not attracted to that by their injury, right?
Yes,
that they're attracted to healthy individuals versus not as emotionally evolved individuals.
Yeah. Yes. No, it's interesting. I read the other day that we choose partners that we recognize have things in them that we need to fix, that actually we need to be fixing in ourselves first, but we choose to fix them
Yeah.
and that potentially will fix us as such.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite interesting how we go about choosing partners for ourselves.
And we have no idea.
No,
We
have nothing.
It's
Nothing.
so subconscious.
And that's why we continue, unless we actually sit down, pause, and take a breath and look at ourselves and look at how we heal ourselves. That's why we continue to go around in those cycles, destructive cycles, traumatic cycles of choosing the same guys. So, yeah, no, it's interesting. It's interesting. Look, thank you for coming and talking to us today. Where do people get in contact with you if they want to learn, if they have recognized what we're talking about and want to learn more or want to deal with some coaching from you guys?
Yes. So my website is just easy, jpcoachingandconsulting.com.
Yeah.
And then, Instagram, Facebook, like sort of LinkedIn, Janet Price, LinkedIn. So you'll have all the handles if you just go to jpcoaching and consulting.com, not ampersand, spelled out and.
And spelled out and. That's okay.
Yeah.
We'll put all of that in the blurb anyway, and in the show notes, I should say blurb. What am I talking about? Show notes. No, it's been great talking to you.
You too.
I'm so sorry you've had to go through 10 years of like hell to get to the end of it. But every cloud is a silver lining, I suppose. And if you hadn't have gone through what you've gone through, you wouldn't have JP Coaching be helping so many people out there.
Well, I really see it this way. And my sons feel this. And I think I've even told without. And
how old are your sons now?
They're 21 and 19.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
So, without this experience, so I can remember as a child always feeling that I had a life purpose and always wondering what that was going to be. And it became very clear to me that this is my life purpose. And so I'm actually 100% grateful. I love, like the love of a brother, my co-parent, like this is how I feel about him, even though he does not feel the same about me. That's not my problem. No. I feel gracious. Thankful and grateful because without this entire experience, I would not have found what I truly believe to be my life purpose. Wow. So it's like, thank you. And I've told him such. And thank you very much. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. So look, one last question for you. What's a piece of advice that someone's gave you that you still use today?
That's the funny thing. That's actually not. So
oh, okay.
That's my frustrating that was my frustrating part in my whole divorce and co-parenting is that I don't believe that I got good advice, period. So I think what I would say is if you are a parent anywhere in the process and you are feeling like you are in crazy making, and nobody is hearing you, then that would be reach out, because that's exactly where I have a free strategy session that I can offer to help. But it's sometimes shining the light on the dynamics that you're too close to, that you cannot see, to help you figure out how you communicate to the professionals so they can actually start helping you versus getting mixed up in the mess of the crazy making.
Yeah. No, I agree. And look, I think everyone needs to do coaching or therapy or whatever, like in their life, right? Because it just brings out different ways to communicate, and it's teaching you different skills, right? So, and stuff that you're too close to. You need somebody outside of you and your life and your relationships with everyone, right? It doesn't matter, work relationships, personal relationships, whatever, to be able to assist you in seeing what you maybe can't see because you're too close.
Right. And why I thought the therapists, the co-parenting therapists and the attorneys would be the right people, right? And they also, at least in the United States, and are also kind of too wrapped up into the family dynamic as it relates to the court system and presume a lot. And by that, of what the dynamic might be based on all the stories that they have seen.
Yeah.
And so are not the most helpful to help one take a step back to say, let's look at this a different way.
Yeah.
How might we do this? And so what I say is, what can you do for yourself to help yourself?
Yeah.
That's how I look at it for everything. Don't keep focusing on what, if only the other person would change, everything would be better. What can
They're not
you,
going to.
right? They're not going to.
They're
right?
not going to. They're never going to. Well, hopefully they will, but they might change into something you don't want, right? But that's their journey.
So what are you
going to
do for yourself?
Yeah,
right. What
exactly.
can you do for yourself and your children to make you happier?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. Look, it's been great talking to you. It's been awesome talking to you, Janet. Hopefully we'll talk again in the future.
Yeah.
Because that would be really good to actually just dive into a few other subjects with you and talk through some situations.
Oh, yeah. I'd love that.
Cool. Well, look, I'm going to let you get on with your evening because it's evening where you are. And thanks.
Thank you very much. It was such a pleasure talking with you today.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you would like to hear more, please hit subscribe wherever you like to hear podcasts. If you would like to support us further, share this episode with your friends and family. And finally, drop us a review on iTunes, as I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, and ideas. It all helps me to understand and produce awesome content you want to hear just like this. If you want to check out our past episodes, write to us, appear on the podcast, or for links, resources, and show notes, go to our website, www.strongsingleandhuman.com. We are also on all the usual social media platforms, Insta, Facey, and Twitter. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you back here again soon. Be kind to yourself, and remember, no one is perfect. We're all just putting one foot in front of the other and doing our best. I'm Claire Martin, and you've been listening to the Strong, Single, and Human podcast.